welcome to the Panthers Movie Den, Episode 2. My name is Joe.
I'm Gary.
I'm Nick.
Today we'll be talking about a new film that came out last week, Dune, directed by Denis Villeneuve. House Atreides is part of an intergalactic empire led by Duke Leto Atreides, played by Oscar Isaac, as they set out on the desert planet of Arrakis, also known as Dune, in search of spice, which is a resource that keeps the galaxy running. The Duke's son, Paul, played by Timothée Chalamet, finds himself growing up in a position of importance, feeling the need to prove himself, and having a great destiny imposed upon him. As Paul and his mother, Lady Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson, try to understand the events playing out, they're placed in circumstances that could lead to a better grasp on Paul's true abilities. This is based on the 1965 novel by Frank Herbert, which I've read. I don't know if either of you have read.
I have not.
Okay, well, it's a good book. Yeah, a lot of people say that it's long and lengthy, and that's true, and it's very dense information, but it is very enjoyable. I read it a year and a half ago when the movie was originally supposed to come out. I'm like, oh great, now I gotta wait an entire another year because it was supposed to come out last October, I believe, and then it was moved to
Wow, they delayed it a whole year?
an entire year. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. That was the big thing. Who wants to start out with the thoughts?
All right. So, to me, Dune was pretty interesting. I liked it, but it wasn't necessarily my favorite movie in the whole world, and it's visually stunning though. It's so beautiful, and if you were to watch this, I think for the first time you have to see it in theaters.
I completely agree.
Yeah, because I cannot imagine watching this like on a small screen TV. It's just not. It's not meant for that. It's meant to be enjoyed on this huge screen.
Now, if you're playing the movie on a telephone, you will never in a trillion years experience the film. You'll think you have experienced it, but you'll be cheated. It's such a sadness that you think you've seen a film on your telephone. Get real.
And there's so many, like the world, the worms, and like everything is just so gigantic, and it looks so awesome on the big screen. But like I was saying before, it's not something I would necessarily go crazy to like watch again. If I ever had to, I would, but it's not something that I would necessarily pick. No, it's not bad. It's just not really that into it. But I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, like I said before about the book, the movie is extremely similar when it comes to how much information is in the book. You really got to be paying attention and following what's going on. It's extremely dense of information.
Yeah, definitely. Because I was a little lost at times, but I was able to figure it out at the end. But yeah, there's you have to pay attention because there's times where I was like, what is going on? but
Yeah, especially the terms. Like in the back of Dune, there's an entire index of all the names and everything and definitions, like the Bene Gesserit and stuff like that, that just someone watching a movie might just easily forget.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that, well, since you've read it, do you think by reading the book, it like helps understanding the movie and everything?
Well, I would definitely say yes. And I'm not I've only read the first book. I'm not a massive fan of the book. People who have read like every installment of the book, which there have been many, partly under Frank Herbert and then some under his son Brian.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with this being under the helm of Denis Villeneuve and his personal connection to the book and how much he loves it, it really made me have high expectations, and I think that for the most part, a lot of them were met.
All right, that's good. Like, you think it translated well?
Yeah, and I think even though I think that this isn't an absolutely amazing movie. It's a very good movie in my opinion, and I think that no other person could have done it as well as he could. And he adapted it in a way that I think appealed to both people who have read the book and people who haven't read the book. And I think that's also a reason why it's doing pretty well at the box office right now, which is a really good thing to hear, especially since the movie obviously ends by not ending, just by leaving it off at a certain point. It's not even a cliffhanger. It's just part 2 is going to come.
Yeah.
It's like the end of a
it's like a chapter.
TV episode. Yeah.
And I also think the cast also helps out a lot with
absolutely
box office.
Amazing cast.
Yeah. It's like every famous person ever.
Yeah. I forgot that Javier Bardem was in it until he came in as Stilgar. When he really the first interaction was when he came into Duke Leto's his like not office but where his visitors will meet and he spit on the table and stuff like that. But the cast is really amazing. I think they all do a great job, especially Oscar Isaac. What do you think?
All right, so in a short summary, I liked it. Okay, so this is one of those on film, like what people call unfilmable types of material, which has also been attributed to Watchmen and Lord of the Rings. And I think it's smart that they are splitting this up into multiple movies. Like the movie itself is very, like you said, very densely packed, and the thing about it, what I thought it would do was like put on a lot of exposition, and it kind of does like in the beginning, but then the story kind of speaks for itself, and like the actors all do a fantastic job, especially Oscar Isaac. And I think the thing about it, and yeah, like you said, it is beautifully shot, but it's kind of like, it kind of leaves you wanting a little bit more, but at the same time, kind of not really, because I feel like there are points where I feel like it drags, but like apart from that, it's again beautifully shot, great acting, and I guess because I think at one point I was really excited for this without really, I do kind of have an understanding of Dune. Like, I know what it's about, and like, and again, like you said, the book is very, very, very densely packed, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Like, there's a lot of, in the story, there's like an entire, I think, ecosystem in the book.
Yeah, it's very political.
Yeah, and yeah.
So just going back to what you were saying before about it being smart to split this up into 2 movies, I think that's definitely true. But at the same time, I think this would have worked much better in a miniseries format.
Which I think they're doing. Which I think
they're going to do it. Yeah.
Which they're doing the first part in the movie and then like part 2 on HBO and split that into TV shows.
Unless I'm wrong, I thought they were going to do part 2 like how they did part 1 in movie theater. Maybe not movie theater, but as a movie. And then do either a spin-off or a continuation miniseries format.
That is actually what I think they're doing.
I think that's a good idea.
I think they're doing it like that. But if it was my choice, I think I would have just started as a miniseries in the beginning. Because a lot of criticisms that you see from people who have read all the books and are massive fans of the Dune franchise, they say there are a lot of moments where there are certain character developments or certain just minute details that didn't feel were properly shown in the movie, but at the same time, it's a movie. It's so much more different than a book. In a book, you have the freedom to have the blank canvas, really.
Yeah.
And you can include as many things as you want. But in a movie, you got to keep the pacing going. You got to keep people interested, and you can't exactly go on a tangent of some random character story, which is specifically attributed to Dr. Yue in this movie.
Going back to like the miniseries thing. Do you think they should do what they did with Watchmen? So they made the film, and it was like, and it's kind of a divisive film, and I like it because I've read Watchmen and I love it. But what they did with Watchmen, the TV show, is that they set it
like Fargo?
After the books. So do you think after a certain time they should do like a show where where it takes place like after like a certain, like after the books, after like a certain book maybe?
Well, what I heard Villeneuve say is that he's always thought of the story as 3 movies, and the second part being the second half of the first book, and then the third part being, I believe it's called Dune Messiah, that he's going to be doing like that. So I don't know if they're going to go through with that. I know they've already announced part 2, but to your question, I think that would be a good idea to do it like that. But again, if it was my choice from the beginning, I would have done it as a miniseries, because I just think that would avoid a lot of the criticisms. And also, in a time where a lot of people binge watch TV, I think that would have been a good choice.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like what Marvel's doing. They have like one overall storyline, but then they have these TV shows where
it'll
like
comes
still
together like that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that could work for Dune as well, considering that it's such a like massive storyline and everything. I think it works better. Plus, I think it'll probably be easier to like remember things that happen. And in a miniseries, you also probably get to remember the terms more, get to know the world more, understand it more.
Yeah.
I think it could work better as a miniseries. I don't know if this happened to you guys, but like, was the movie like really dark, like really hard to see, like visually dark?
Sometimes I watched it in the theater, then I also watched it at home.
Yeah.
In following days, and especially the sandworm scene where you see the sandworm.
Yeah.
That was really dark.
Yeah, because I don't know if it was just the movie theater I
think it might have been the theater.
It might have been.
I think so.
Because like, all right, so they have these lights going down the row, so you find the seats. And they're not bright, obviously, but they still have this little glare to them. And there's some scenes where I'm like, what's going on? And I have 20/20 vision. So I was like, I just see like black blobs on the screen. I can't really tell what's going on.
Well, I don't think, for me, I don't think I really felt that for a lot of this stuff. But especially for that sandworm scene that I brought up, I think that applies to that.
I guess, because it was so extremely dark.
Okay, so on that, like, I wouldn't say that it's, like, extremely dark to a point where I couldn't tell what was happening, but, like, there are, like, I would say there are, like, some scenes that aren't really lit the best. Like, again, the sandworm scene. But I guess on the other hand, I don't really want to say that's the point, but, like, it kind of is more atmospheric
I know
that
what you're
way.
saying. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
So I guess it's just my movie theater sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's your fault.
Yeah.
So, based on what I thought of the movie as a whole, again, I really liked it, but I do think that the main problem I had was I was thrown off so much by the pacing. So much. Because I already knew that they were going to split this up into 2 movies, but I didn't know when this thing would end. Because the interesting thing is they meet the Fremen, and this isn't a spoiler, but they meet the Fremen in the movie right at the end. And in the book, it's about halfway through, which matches up with the 2-movie plan that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But when they meet the Fremen, that's such a major turning point that I think it threw me off a little bit. Because okay, you know what? Now we'll start spoilers. So just, if you've seen the movie, this is where we're going to start talking about spoilers. Knife fight that Paul has with the Fremen, with one of the Fremen, is, when I read the book, one of the most crucial moments in the entire book. And I think in the movie, when it came up to that point in the movie, it was already starting to die down and starting to come to some sort of a conclusion. So I think that part was a little bit rushed because, like I said, in the book, that was a really major moment for me because it showed that was the major character development for Paul and leading into him following his father's death and coming into something of his own. Because a lot of people have said that, and I completely disagree with this, and in defense of the movie in this aspect, that Paul is just the same, and it's coming from people who've read the books as well, that Paul is just the same vulnerable young kid that he was at the start, and I think that's completely,
I don't think so.
Completely untrue.
No.
And but I can see how some people may say that just on a movie standpoint, if the book hadn't existed just as a movie as itself. I think that if you were to watch, I mean, you two can speak to it. Do you think that the knife fight was it very memorable at the end, or was it kind of just okay, that happened and then we're gonna move on?
Yeah, it didn't feel like a big, like, well, since you said it's like a really big important scene in the book, didn't really feel that way in the movie at least. It kind of just felt like you said, just the scene. It didn't feel like this really big turning point, like this really big moment in the movie. I didn't know that. I just thought it was like a regular knife fight. I didn't know this was like the turning point for Paul's character.
That's at least how I saw it in the book.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said on like Paul being the same person, I'd say yes and no. He definitely is not the same person.
Yeah, no.
But he still inherits some traits of that, and like
Yeah, you can't just completely. And I agree with you. You can't just completely go from he was this to now he's this like God.
yeah.
You can't just like go from that. To
I mean,
that.
it's more of a natural progression.
Yeah.
And I think the thing with the knife fight scene, you kind of, now that you bring it up, I kind of realize, yeah, that's a bit on the rushed side. Yeah, it's rushed, and I kind of wish they did go more into it, but like, I think by that point, it was kind of like, I don't think it was just placed at the best part. I guess at the best, like, because that was kind of, it was placed right at the ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of ended the movie really weird, in my opinion, in a kind of odd spot.
Yeah.
Because this is, like I said, a turning point. And when you start off by starting to introduce these people and then kind of just cutting it off, it seems odd to me. I think that a better place...
It's a little awkward.
Yeah, it's a little awkward. I think a better place to have ended it would have seemed like more proper position to end the movie at, and then just say come back for part 2 would be right when they meet the Fremen before all this stuff happens. And I think that also would have been a good thing to look back on when the second movie comes out, to see the first part this was Paul, and the second part Paul was different. I think it's more. I think it's still going to play like that when the second movie eventually comes out, but I think more so. I just wouldn't have gone with the way they did it at the end with the knife fight and them starting to get into Paul's relationship with the Fremen, and just they kind of built it up, but then kind of just stopped, which I think was a little odd. And I'm kind of criticizing a lot of Villeneuve's choices here, but like I said, I don't think anyone else could have adapted it as well as he did, and I think he did a really great job. But it's just that little thing that I think could have been done a little bit differently, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so going back to kind of what you said on the like whole he could have, like, there's nobody else who could have done it. There's no way that this was gonna please everybody, because this is, I'd say that like a lot of these like films are like these unfilmable like type films, like again Watchmen and Lord of the Rings, which are, because they're both intensely packed with like detail and like
Massive scale.
Scale. Yeah, I'd say that. Massive scale for Lord of the Rings. Watchmen's more just like they missed the satire and tone of that. But again, like, I guess going back to like what you said, this is not going to please everybody. And yeah, he definitely like did the job like the best he could. So like, I'm not really saying that like he didn't try. I guess like he tried his best with it, and like there's clearly, unlike I guess the 1984 film, which I guess we should. I was wondering when they were gonna bring that up, but like unlike that, there's clearly respect and love for the source material on that.
Have you seen David Lynch's version?
I haven't.
I have, and I do not like it at all. I think it's a very bad movie.
I just know about the blue box.
Yeah, as I was saying to Gary earlier, it reeks of 80s primitive special effects, and I think that the movie, it's David Lynch. It's gonna be weird, and I don't like using the word weird with David Lynch, because I think that's just a criticism people use just to pass it off. but it's objectively odd movies that David Lynch makes in the tone. He does that intentionally, but I think that I don't think he was a good choice for Dune personally.
He called me and asked me if I would read this book. I wasn't 100%. I don't know quite how that happened. That's my one, in my mind, big failure. And but I learned a tremendous amount on that film.
Yeah. Okay, then let's bring this up. Has anybody heard of Jodorowsky's Dune or seen the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
I haven't.
Okay. So I guess I'll explain it. So Alexander Jodorowsky, extremely like kind of trippy sci-fi like movies. He was going to make a Dune movie that was going to be 14 hours, which I want to see that doc, and like in the back of my mind, I always thought, like, while watching Dune, I was like, what would have this looked like with the 14 hours? Like, what would have, like, I guess thinking about, like, the 2 hours that, like, 2.5 hours, really, that, like, he, like, Denis Villeneuve went with, like, the 2 hours that the film goes for. I kind of wonder, like, I guess what the rest of the film would be like then.
Yeah, I agree with that point. I think that there's also a lot of different interpretations of the book itself, and I know that Jodorowsky, he is more vibrant to colors, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. More vibrant with his colors of the costumes and just of the world itself. When I was reading the book, I saw it more as how it was portrayed in Villeneuve's movie, and I think that was another thing that was done well.
I'd say that, yeah, that, like, the tone and, like, and I guess going back to the lighting, it fits Dune. Like, it fits, like, this whole tone of, like, I guess, exploration. Like, it's dark, but there's, like, elements of light in there. Like, I guess the best example of that, I guess, would be, like, all of the, like, indoor scenes, like, the meeting scenes. Like, there's like all this darkness, but then there's like hints of light.
Yeah,
and that fits Dune.
Yeah, especially like Paul's. Maybe not. I don't know if it was his bedroom or not, but Paul's room that he was in when the the hunter seeker when it was trying to kill him, like rooms like that. But I like you said, and we've said many times already. I think it fits, and it fits his tone.
Yeah, I think so. Well. Even though I could barely see anything, largely in part of my movie theater.
This is a terrible take from you, Gary. Everyone's going to think, I'm not going to go see this movie because this is completely dark and I won't be able to see anything.
Well, don't go to the movie theater I went to, Merrick Cinemas. Do not go there. Go somewhere else.
What about you, Robert? Can you see?
Not too good. I mean, if I don't move my head, I can see you pretty good, more or less. But when I start riding, the bag's moving all over, and I'm riding blind.
Nobody can see.
So?
So it'd be nice to see.
I can't see, you can't see. So what?
Watch the movie. Yeah. Don't go to that theater, though.
Well, we are in spoilers, so you're talking to people who have already seen the movie, so it's kind of useless right now. That's all I'm gonna say.
I don't think a color palette like Star Wars would work here because, like, you know, Star Wars is a little more vibrant, more saturated. I don't think that would fit for Dune. They're both like very different in tone, and Dune is more serious, more grounded, I think, than something like Star Wars. So I do think like a darker palette works better.
It's not that it's well, okay, it is that it's kind of more grounded. It is also more, I guess, not, and again, serious. I guess it's saying more operatic than Star Wars. It's more operatic. It's more, like, expansive than Star Wars. It's more, like...
I don't think
I know what you're trying to say, because serious isn't the word you're looking for, even though it is more grounded in that part, but it's just... Like I said, it's more of a political movie.
Yeah,
it's like intergalactic politics. What you would expect that to be?
Mm-hmm.
And just, I'll just add one more thing on what I thought about the comparisons from the book to the movie. The one thing that I think was the biggest misfire on the director's part was the importance of spice in the story of
That
Dune.
Yeah.
That did the spice, which is pretty much the the whole point of the book,
Because when
did feel completely sidelined.
Yeah.
I agree. Because when you're reading the book, this might seem like an over exaggeration, but at the same time, it's sort of true. You feel like spice is brought up every other page. There's a character saying, "We must do this because of this spice," and I'll paraphrase here, but there was a line that is saying like pretty much spice runs the galaxy. It keeps it running, and it was just mentioned. I think like one moment towards the beginning where the books that or the like sort of audio books that Paul is reading that's used as exposition, it's mentioned in there when just like how they mentioned the worm, but they mentioned spice like once, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Because at the beginning of the movie, if I'm not mistaken, they explain what spice is, right?
Yeah.
Like at the
Yeah,
beginning.
they do. That's what I was talking about at the book. Yeah.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the movie, they start talking about how important the spice is. So, right away I thought, like, okay, this is like what the movie's going to be about. This is like this is like the sacred thing. So, it never really came up again. It was kind of that one time and briefly mentioned, like, sprinkled throughout the movie, but never really, like, it didn't feel that important, as I thought it would.
Yeah, because that's the huge thing. The spice must flow. That's the big thing in the book, and that's the key motivation also for the Atreides going to Arrakis to begin with. And in the movie, it may come across to people who haven't read the book as sort of a militaristic thing, even though they do make a point of Duke Leto saying that this isn't that he's trying to be here not to attack the Fremen, not to take over the lands. That's the Fremen's big concern when they see the Atreides to begin with. But I think just saying the word spice is such the important thing in this movie.
Yeah.
They do have that scene where the carrier is trying to mine the spice, but again, just the word spice I think is just such a crucial thing that should have been more included, in my opinion, at least.
Listen to me. The spice must flow. The spice has given me accelerated evolution for 4,000 years. It has enabled you to live 200. It gives the Bene Gesserit sisterhoods the metaphysical ability to see beyond. You have superior powers. Our power to force space is in the spice. Without us, your empire would be lost. On isolated, scattered planets, you would be lost.
So, the thing is, with the spice, it gets mentioned a couple of times. Like, there are scenes, like, for example, I'm thinking of the scene where, like, Oscar Isaac's character, like, they look up upon the mountain and there's spice, like, flowing. And then, like, the scene where Paul is, like, the shuttle thing has crashed and, like, he's absorbing the spice. But again, it's never to a level where it feels important.
Yeah, I think that was the main point I was trying to say. And I think, yeah, you said that well.
One thing that I would like to point out about this movie is that I love how they played with scale. Like, every time a character was next to a ship or the worm or next to some building, it looked gigantic. It looked immense. And it was so cool that, like, you actually see, like, the full person. They look like a little ant compared to the ship, building, worm, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's something that I love when movies do. Like, for example, like in Jurassic Park, when they, like, stand and they see, like, the Brachiosaurus, like, you see the full person and you see the full dinosaur. Like, you really get a sense of how big these things are. And Dune did a fabulous job with that, I think. And it kind of captures that, like, awe and wonder of movie magic. And I love that so much about this movie.
Okay, so kind of going off what you said, yeah, the scale is very, like, it's very well done, and that kind of goes with, like, how, like, beautifully shot all the
Yeah, definitely.
all of the, like, areas and all of the and all like the
Like the
sand,
scenery and
like,
everything?
Yeah, the scenery's
Yeah.
fantastic. All that just like so well done,
Mm-hmm.
and it fits Dune so well.
Yeah, because I know in like other movies they have these shots where it's like maybe from the character's point of view, and then you just see like maybe from their point of view, and you just look up, or it doesn't show the full thing. You don't really get a good general idea of how big whatever they're trying to show is. But here, when you show like the full thing and the full person, it's great.
Yeah, I think that definitely matches just the epic scale of the movie and how the story as a whole is just it is an epic.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been talking too much about about the things I sort of disliked in the movie. So I just want to talk about what I did like. I think the character development, the establishment of the world, the story, and the stakes, and just the tone, acting, and direction, everything was completely on point.
Yeah, acting was
in
great.
those regards. And between Villeneuve's other two movies before this, his past two movies that were also sci-fi, Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, two movies I love also, and Dune itself, I think that Villeneuve has really proved himself to be a master in this specific subgenre. Because it's not just like a regular sci-fi movie, it really tends to be more of primarily focused on the drama in it. And I think he does that very well. And I think the special effects, they were absolutely jaw-dropping. Like you said, with
The effects were fantastic.
Without a doubt.
like you said with the scale, that especially plays a part in that. And like the sandworm, it just blew me away.
Yeah, I know. Something
Oh, yeah.
especially like the sandworm could look really ugly with CGI. Like, it could look hollow. That's like one big thing with CGI. There's sometimes a lot of things that just feel like hollow. Like, they don't feel like they have any weight, or like it just feels like you could put your hand right through. But yeah, sandworm looked fantastic. And not only that, but everything. Everything looked great.
And I'll just do something contrasting to what I said before about the things that I think it didn't exactly match up with how I thought about it in the book. I think that one thing that he actually impressed me with was stuff like Paul's meeting with the Bene Gesserit mother when with the box test and had to put his hand in the box. There was stuff in that scene that I was thinking. There's other stuff in the movie where I said, yeah, it's exactly what I envisioned when reading the book. But then there was stuff like the box test scene where I was like, I wish I saw it like that in the book. Like, especially the voice, I think, is done very well. I think that was something that I did not envision, like how it's portrayed in this movie, but I like it even better in the movie itself. I think especially when like the voice becomes all distorted and the sound, the way the sound is done to make it seem like it's taking over the person, like how Paul is forcefully brought towards the Bene Gesserit witch. I think that was just a really interesting choice, and it was just really well executed.
You often dream things that happen just as you dreamed them.
Yes.
The test is simple. Remove your hand from the box, and you die.
What's in the box?
Pain. An animal caught in a trap will gnaw off its own leg to escape. What will you do?
I would really want to have the voice. It looks fun to have.
Kill someone when you get kidnapped?
Not necessarily for that reason. I just think it would be entertaining to have. You know, you could pull a lot of fun pranks with that.
So, cut it. I guess, as somebody who hasn't read the book and kind of has like this somewhat knowledge of the book, there are moments where I felt like this is how I would imagine it if I read the book.
Yeah, I didn't see it like how. So when you talk about Jodorowsky's version and David Lynch's version is sort of a mix between the 1984 film and this movie when it comes to color palette and just the tone of it. But I think that this movie just masters it. But another thing I just want to build, just something that I observed when watching the movie the first time and especially the second time, was, and this is kind of going back to what I said before, but the most climactic part in this movie comes 35% into the movie when Duke Leto dies, when he gets killed. And regarding the handling of storytelling for the remaining time, I think it's hard to distinguish between whether it was properly done or not. Because, like I said, many people have complained about moments in the book that are either excluded or redone in some way. And especially going back to Dr. Yue. In Dr. Yue, he was the person who made the deal with Baron Harkonnen to kill Duke Leto in exchange for his wife to be returned to him. And that was pretty major thing in the book in regards to Dr. Yue, his character himself, and the trauma and the troubles that he went through. But in the movie, I think it was done well, and that was done in the right way, because you can't be focusing so much on this minor character that it will both make it seem like it's dragging away from the story at hand, and also I think focusing too much on a minor character like that would raise suspicion for the surprise that comes. And in the book, you see Lady Jessica's suspicions of Dr. Yue, and I think that part being excluded from the movie just led more to the tension that was built up. And were either you two surprised by Dr. Yue? Did you expect that to happen? For him to be the traitor and assassinate Duke Leto?
Not really.
No, not quite.
Yeah, so I think that was done very well.
And like what you were saying too, is like, I feel like you were saying earlier, in the book you can go on and on about backstories, this and that, but in a movie it's not.
Yeah,
doesn't
after
work
all,
the
this
same.
is a movie.
You're gonna lose attention.
Mhm.
Like, people are gonna not care, and especially if it's for like pretty minor character, more than likely you're not gonna care.
Yeah, especially for a movie of length that's already 2.5 hours.
Yeah, that's one thing too. For people that want to go see this, you need patience, because this movie's slow. Like, it builds up very slowly, and it's not for people that are expecting something as action packed like Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. And what I mentioned earlier about the minute details in the book not being focused on too much, I think that even though it doesn't have those major character moments that are more in they're looking more into the characters and that are more into understanding the characters themselves, it's not to say that this movie doesn't have character moments. It certainly does, and I think in fact it's done really well. But what it's hardest to understand is when people say that characters like the Harkonnens, just the General Harkonnens himself, that they just seemed too generic. And I think that that's also the purpose of part 2. So be able to expand on characters that, and especially Paul.
Definitely. I did like the relationship between Paul and his mom.
Yeah,
I think that was one of the strongest parts of the movie.
Yeah, I think just looking back at all these different parts, like when you just brought that up right now, I'm just realizing how much I thought differently than other people who have really read the book. Mm-hmm. Because I thought Lady Jessica was extremely interesting in this movie. I thought that she was even more,
I liked her.
More interesting in the book in some parts. I think she was played very well, and I think that her relationship with Paul is done very well as well, and it matches up with the book in that part also. But I think Lady Jessica, she's just such an important part of the book and is a really big influence on Paul, and I think that they gave her the importance she deserved.
I also really loved Oscar Isaac's character. I feel like it was so... I know this is based on a book written years ago, so it's not necessarily new, but it feels so nice to see like a king that isn't a complete jerk.
I know he's very genuine.
He's nice.
He's a genuinely nice father who wants the best for his son.
Exactly.
I think that's something that really sets him apart from other people.
That's something that you never see anymore. Now it's just like the child wants to be something else, doesn't want to be royalty or whatever. King's like, no, how dare you, this and that, you have to continue this and that. But finally, it feels so nice to have a king that actually wants the best for their son.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up too, because I had a quote pulled up about the Duke that best shows his character, and this is what it reads. And Kynes, who is the Fremen that followed them when they were mining the spice on Arrakis, and Kynes, returning the stare, found himself troubled by the fact that he observed here, the Duke was concerned more over the men than he was over the spice. He risked his own life and that of his son to save the men. He passed off the loss of a spice crawler with a gesture. The threat to men's lives had him in a rage. A leader such as that would command fanatic loyalty. He would be difficult to defeat. Against his own will and all previous judgments, Kynes admitted to himself, "I like this Duke." I think that's a quote that's one of my favorite quotes in the book as a whole, and maybe my favorite quote, just because it shows how much of a different person the Duke Leto is, and how he cares more about his men, which is also why he said we'll do the best that we can to get all the men on the ships, even though Paul said we didn't have enough room. So I think that Duke Leto, even though he does die in this movie, and for regular moviegoers who didn't read the book, they may be upset about that, but I think that he was given enough character where it doesn't seem like he was just this accessory to build up Paul's character development, just to say this is his father and now he died, so Paul must feel something towards that. It was more than just that, I think.
Well, yeah, I didn't read the book, but I didn't see him as like you said, an accessory. I really liked him. I'd say it's probably like one of, if not my favorite character in the movie. Like I was deeply saddened when he died. But yeah, no, definitely I think it was very refreshing to see that. And like going into it, because again, I didn't know what this was about. I really thought that he was going to be like against Paul's decisions and everything. Mm-hmm. So I was actually pretty surprised. Honestly, I think that was the biggest surprise for me in the whole movie, that he was like this nice, like a genuinely good person.
And the last thing I'll say about this movie is that I'm extremely excited for part 2, but the one thing, just going back to the pacing, I think the pacing was just the thing that really threw me off in the first watch. And when I watched the second part, going in knowing what I was getting in terms of what was included in the movie and how it was playing out and how long it was taking to play out, I think that even though this is intentionally an incomplete movie, it still feels like 2.5 hours of build up in some way. But yeah, that's really what I think of the movie as a whole.
Yeah. So I liked it. Again, not too crazy, but I still think it's really enjoyable. I respect the filmmakers, all the detail that they put in, the scale, beautifully shot, beautiful movie. And yeah, I would recommend it.
So it is, I definitely enjoyed it. It is, again, beautifully shot, but there is points where it drags, and like you said, and now that I think about it, it is kind of 2.5 hours of buildup, but there's stuff in that buildup that definitely...
it recognizes that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's stuff in that buildup that definitely doesn't feel like it is just building up. Like, there are points of that where, like, stuff, like, does happen and, like, there is exciting scenes. But, like, kind of... I want to say the last 15%... I'd say the last 10 to 15% kind of feels a little iffy and rushed. And like you said on that last scene, like, if that's supposed to be a big moment and it really, really doesn't feel like that big moment, it kind of just feels like a throwaway thing. Mm-hmm. I feel like with that, it's trying to like make another like epic climax thing, but it's just like by the time it comes, it's just like the film's ending. And
you already feel that it's starting to die down. I think that just introducing another conflict there seemed sort of unnecessary.
But overall, enjoyable enough to like, it's still enjoyable, and I'd recommend it.
Yeah, and just to put all my thoughts in one sentence, I'd probably say that I'll like this much better when I watch it back to back with part 2. But I'm just gonna have to wait 3 years to find out. But I have faith in
like 5 hours of your day.
Yeah.
No, I actually do have faith that they'll pick up the, like, they'll see the criticisms and like fix them.
Yeah.
Like, I have faith that they'll do the next one better.
Yeah, the Villeneuve definitely cares about his fans. And in regards to how I'd place this with his other movies, I'd probably have it 4th I'd say I have Prisoners in number 1, which is I really think that's one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. Prisoners, and then Blade Runner 2049, then Arrival, and then I'd say Dune, and like Sicario, and Enemy after that. And I also watched one of his earlier films that was not a documentary, but it felt like a documentary he was trying to make. That was depicting a school shooting that was made in, I believe, 2009. And that was a good movie too, but I haven't seen his earlier movies. I believe there's one other movie that's in English, and his other movies are in, I believe, French, because he is French Canadian. But yeah, that's where I put it there. And I think that, unless anyone else has anything else to say.
Oh, actually, I do.
Okay.
Coming from an art major, that logo is amazing. It's just like I had to point that out. Like it's so interesting that it's the same shape, just rotated different ways. A+ on whoever came up with that.
Yeah, that was done in one of the book covers, one of the variations of that. I don't know how long ago, but
all right. So that graphic designer deserves a raise.
Yeah,
they better have gotten a raise because, like I said, coming from an art major, that's amazing.
All right, that'll conclude episode 2 here. Hampton Movie Den.
See ya.
See you later.
Goodbye.